Today, we're talking about if the Chicago Bulls make it back to the play-in this upcoming season, if this is good or bad. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Mazelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are doing a little bit of a debate here. And so if the Chicago Bulls make it to the play-in again this upcoming season, and so this would be the fourth straight season in the play-in, is this good or bad? So I'm going to start with reasons why this would be good. Then we're going to take a look at why this would be bad, because I definitely think that there can be some good if this team does make it to the play-in, but there's going to be some things that would have to happen with that. And so I think that the first thing that comes to mind with really it becoming good that this team makes it to the play-in next season is that the team growth has got to be there. And when we're talking about team growth, I think that you are seeing players that take a step forward in their development. So just starting with the star players here, I think that when you look at just the way that the team is currently built and just the way that it might get built here for the future, I think that AK is definitely banking on this backcourt with Josh Giddey and Kobe White. And I definitely think that he's looking at Modest Mazelis and saying to himself, look, I think that I have a hit here. And so I think that what happens now is if these players take a step forward and you start to see the better field goal percentages, you see the better on-off numbers from these players. You also see, too, that they're mentioned in the individual awards. And so whether that's going to be the All-Stars or it's the most improved players or whatever that is, like they're in the discussions, like I think that that is a step forward. Now, I'm not saying that individual awards are going to win you an NBA championship, and I'm not saying that they necessarily qualify you for the playoffs, but it would indicate some growth there, especially if it does lead to some wins, which I think it would. And so that's another thing, too. I think that the wins would have to go up slightly to make it a plus. And so just starting with the stars there, I think that that's a key. Then also, too, the win total going up a little bit. And then next, when you look at the other players, and so I'm talking about players like, an Isaac Okora, or I'm looking at, Ayo Dosunmu, or, looking at Noah Asenge. I think that those players would definitely have to take a step forward. And so with Noah Asenge, I think that you would see flashes that would certainly justify, him being picked at the position that he was taken. And then also, too, it would give you some assurance just really with the future and the direction of the team, especially if he takes a step forward like Modest Mazelis. And so you know that you're doing something right with the development there. And then when you look at Ayo Dosunmu, if he continues to just be what he is defensively, takes another step forward offensively, and really starts to just get that much better as a two-way player, like it just turns your team around. And so those type of step forwards you need. And then when you look at players that we just really don't know about, I think that this would be another thing that would be a key for if this were good, if the Bulls finished in the play-in situation, is just understanding your pieces. And so that means that, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, like you can understand really what their roles are. You understand what they can do as players. And I think that just coming into this season, that is still a question mark for the Chicago Bulls. It's just what exactly, are you going to do with Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips? And so I think it would be a win if you head to the play-in situation. You saw the player development, you get some defined roles with some players that you had some question marks with, and you have a better plan now of how to move forward. And so I think that those are some of the key aspects here. And then the next thing that I would say as well is that, did you also maybe make some moves to where the team perhaps got more younger, right? And you still were able to get to the play-in situation. And so that means, hey, if you do flip Vooch and you get, a player back, or you get some draft capital back to set you up for the future, and you still make the play-in, I think that that is still going to be a win for the Chicago Bulls because you get some draft capital back if that is what you decide to do. And then also, too, if you get a player back, that fits your timeline, I think that that would be a win as well. And I think also, too, that would help you again with just the direction as well. It just would show you that, look, AK is pivoting off of the past team. He is continuing to move forward. So I think we would feel good as Bulls fans knowing that, look, the direction looks a little bit more clear. And so let's see what he does, with these expiring contracts and things like that. Because if you're able to move these guys and you're still able to produce a play-in situation, I think that that is going to be good. And then lastly, I think another thing that would make this thing worthwhile would just be, what are the adjustments looking like? Do we see Billy Donovan now start to utilize, players that were out of the rotation last year? I think we've talked about this with Jalen Smith. I'd love to see him get a chance. I'd love to see him go out there and then try to utilize, two bigs on the floor at the same time and really try to maybe, use the size advantage there and stuff like that. Let's see if, we see that from Billy Donovan. Is he going to make the adjustments and things like that, or would it be more of the same? And then, sticking with just the coaching, the style, and everything else, like I think if the team takes a step forward, from just statistics, how that looks, I think that that would be better. Like, did you cut down the turnovers? Are you more efficient on the offensive end? Did the defense get a little bit better? Like those things like that, I think absolutely matter, and how you could justify, being in the play-in situation again. And I'll say this last thing too. When you look at the record for the Bulls, I know, winning 39 games and losing 43, it's definitely been tough to see. But, just looking at the Eastern Conference last year, the Detroit Pistons were sixth in the Eastern Conference. And so they avoided the play-in situation with 44 wins and 38 losses. And so the Bulls are at 39. Can they find a way to get 5 or 6 more wins? I think that it's possible they do so. And I mean, I think that you could see this team maybe take the jump. It just is going to depend, really on the teams that really finished ahead of them. The Atlanta Hawks, the Miami Heat, the Orlando Magic, they were all in the playing situation with the Bulls. And so, maybe injuries hit and things like that, adverse situations like it always happens in the NBA. And so there's going to be a chance for the Chicago Bulls in this window to get there. It's just going to be a matter of those things kind of falling in line. And so can the Bulls do that? And so now, just looking at why it would be bad, I just think that it would be the exact reverse, really, to pretty much all I've said here, because I think that if you see the same things over and over again, right, with the way that the team is looking to just make the adjustments and stuff like that out of timeouts and in-game situations and things like that, not taking care of the basketball and just kind of making the same mistakes, from last season, I think that that would show you that the team growth was not there. I think another thing too is if AK decides to sit on assets. And so that kind of goes back to just really what I was talking about before, that if players do not fit, and I'm not talking about just expiring deals like a Kevin Herter or Vooch, but I'm talking about if that Dalen Terry or Julian Phillips or any one of your young pieces aren't going to be, just the long-term solution, then I think that AK is going to have to get aggressive, and he's going to have to make some moves to get the team in the right direction. And so that means that you cannot just sit there and just let the thing play out. And so hopefully that would be something that's avoidable. But if he doesn't, I think that that would make the play-in situation definitely not worth it for the Bulls next season. And then next, when you're talking about, just the team taking a step back, and so maybe I've touched on this already, but if you just see, in these categories that they were good at a season ago, whether it was shooting the 3 ball, being able to get up and play this pace and stuff like that, and the Bulls kind of fall back more from what they did this last season, I think that that would definitely be something where you look at that and go, okay, this is definitely not a good situation because, the team got worse and you're still in the play-in situation and you still are not showing, any real growth or direction there. So I think that that would definitely be a reason where you would say that this is bad. And so, lastly, what I'll say about this and the play-in situation and why I say, look, it can be good. And I think that it's really going to ultimately depend on really where you go from there, is that really, I think a lot of times in sports and things like that, you have to learn how to lose before you learn how to win. And what I like, about this group, and I didn't really talk about this from yesterday, but on Casey Johnson's fast break, he was talking about how the Bulls have been doing these informal workouts. And I feel like that what I love with Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu is that these guys really have become, I think, great leaders for this team. And I think that really they're helping to really lay down the foundation and identity of the team. And I think that you're going to start to see that type of toughness that both of these players have shown. And I think it's something that is really going to, I think, kind of go through the team here. And I think that Modest Buzelis is going to be a guy that also carries that torch. And I do think that Josh Giddey, he has it in him. I think that he can bring the experience that he had with OKC, the games that he helped that team win, and bring that experience over here, especially now, he would be the lead guard. And so I think that when you look at that and you just say, okay, this team has to figure it out. And if they can take a step forward, they win, another 3-4 games or so and give themselves a chance and just are right there to get into a play-in or playoff situation, excuse me. I think that that's a win here. So you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. Do you think that the Bulls getting into the play-in situation could be a good thing for this team next year or this upcoming year? Or do you feel like this could be all bad, regardless of what happens? Like, if the Bulls make it to the play-in situation, do you feel like it's all bad, or do you feel like really it's neither? Because, like I said, I think that a lot of this stuff really comes down to just development. You need to see, I think, some development, either when you're seeing it on paper or you just see it in games and things like that, where you can see, if the players just getting better and you go, okay, I can build off of this. I can bring in certain players. We can do this and we can take this thing a step forward. So anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Bulls. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.